Good afternoon. You are now tuned in to Elife Power Lunch with Dr. Baruch and Kris Murray. I am your host, Kris Murray, and to my right, the one and only Dr. Baruch.
Hey.
How you doing today?
Very well. How about yourself?
I am wonderful. You know, we're not on vacation. A lot of people are on vacation today, but we're here putting our foot to the pavement and doing what we're doing and reaching out to the community to make sure that you have the information that you need.
Yes, indeed. And that's important, especially in this day and time, because there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation, uninformation, lack thereof, and everything else. And we want to make sure we get the right information out to you. And today is no different than any other day.
That's right.
We got some really powerful stuff coming at you. What we got going on today, Kris?
That's right. Well, as usual, we're promoting health, wealth, and knowledge of self in one power-packed hour of inspiration and information. And we have a special guest today. Dr. Yu is in the building. How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to the information that you'll be sharing with us today.
An honor and a pleasure to be here with you all.
Awesome.
Great.
So we always like to start out with a hot topic, and I don't have to keep saying it, but I am always on social media, and I've seen the way people are kind of here and there with the holidays. You know, a lot of people have been raised Christian, and so, you know, we celebrate Christmas, and so some people are just straight up, you know, Christmas, and, you know, we're buying gifts, we're sharing, we're caring, we're doing that. Some people are very Christ heavy, so if you do anything that's outside of that, you know, they're on your page like, well, don't, you know, you can't have Christmas without Christ. And then you have the other people who are kind of moved on from that. We're celebrating Kwanzaa, we're celebrating other things, or we're just in the middle, we don't know what to do. So I wanted to just bring that to the table today to just see what your experiences have been with that. What have you seen, and what advice would you have for people who are transitioning, but because the entire world, you know, maybe their family in particular are still kind of stuck in the old ways? How do you survive the holidays?
Go ahead, Dr. Yu.
Well, for me, I grew up Christian, and I grew up celebrating Christmas, and for an interesting reason, I believe that the concept of Christ really wasn't a part of Christmas for a lot of people who I knew, and even in my household, there wasn't a very heavy influence in that sense. So a lot of Christmas was based on family and, you know, sharing the holidays together. The gift giving, of course, is a part of that. But in terms of transitioning from that, and I don't think that celebrating Kwanzaa or anything else takes away from the concept of Christmas and the essence of what it is in terms of family and in terms of the energy that it shares. And I think that it's okay to share that energy as long as we keep, you know, the forefront of how it's benefiting us as a community, how it's benefiting us as individuals, as a family, and keep that in the forefront of everything. In terms of whether it's that or whether it's Kwanzaa, I love Kwanzaa. That's one of the reasons why I celebrate that to this day as well, is because there is a foundation of how it can benefit us all as a whole. And it's not just about gift giving, even though that's a great part of it. You know, everyone loves to receive gifts, and many of us love to give gifts as well, but at the end of the day, do those gifts benefit us? Is it benefiting our children? Is it benefiting our community as a whole? And I think that's what it's really about at the end of the day. So I'm not against celebrating anything, but, you know, I'm about celebrating things for the right reasons.
Right.
Great. Yeah, I think with regard to the holiday season, I think it's probably been about 40 plus years since I've celebrated Christmas. And I remember going through a very troubling period. It was when I was a teenager, because I remember listening to a song. I can't remember who first sung it, but Whitney Houston sung it also. I believe the children are our future. I don't know whether that's the name of it, but that was what I remember. And I remember thinking about how if the children are our future, and we're lying to our children, and we're laying a foundation of deceit in the minds of our children, then how can we expect this not to have an impact? And I remember one year during the holiday season, I was really hot. And I was upset that we are perpetuating this lie, and everybody is perpetuating this lie as though the lie is the truth, and making everybody feel who was wanting to honor and respect and espouse the truth, making them feel uncomfortable as though we were doing something wrong. And so that was a tough time for me. And since then, of course, I've learned to, kind of relax and not be so rigid. But at the same time, I do recognize the truth is the truth, and the lie. If the truth will make you free, then obviously the lie is going to hold you captive. And when we think about the celebration of this entity, and the fact that even the Pope has recently, of course, recanted, because it's not the first time. This isn't when so-called Jesus was born. So what we're celebrating, we don't know as of this point. I'm ad-libbing now because he said the first half. But at this point, what are we doing? And I talked to a guy up in Langley Park, and Langley Park has a large South American population, Central and South American population. And this guy had more lights on his house than, it was so ridiculous. It was just ridiculous. And he said his response to a group of people was that he wanted to show his love for the Lord, and he wanted to make sure that the death angel passed over him. And I was like, oh, so now you mixing up, you bringing some other stuff into this, and now it's the death angel. So this is Passover.
Right.
This is Passover and the birth all mixed into one, and the person, and you saw the progression. You saw some guy had just lights on his tree inside his window, and then you saw somebody else did the whole thing on the front of the house, and then somebody did something out in the front yard a little bit, and then this guy had every animal on the planet that you could think of decorated in lights and color, and they were flashing, and some of them were moving and all kinds of stuff. And I said, oh, so brother man, you are going to heaven. You are going to heaven. Again, because, and that would be a great pitch. Wouldn't it be a great pitch for somebody to come out and say, somebody in the lighting industry to come out and say, the stronger you light your house, the more brilliant you light your house, the more you let Christ know of your love for him. Can you imagine? The sales would be through the roof. Everybody would be lit up. They'd be like stupid, like spotlights shining up into the sky. I'm over here.
Right. Well, that is, it's funny that you say that, but that's the truth. That's how it works. They figure out something to trigger us to go and shop like crazy, and they use it to the max. That's just the strategy that they have. And something else you said about the kids being the future, that's one of my concerns, because it's like, we're telling them Santa this and Santa that, but they really understood how some families work really hard to make sure they have, as close to everything that they want as possible. And then to have this other guy come and get the credit, and they're excited to see this guy, they're leaving him cookies and doing all this other stuff. It hurts my heart, because I see, a lot of families struggle in just, making sure that their kids have what they need. And so I had the pleasure over the weekend to photograph an event called the WCB Christmas Wishes event, which is hosted by Maya Wright and the We Can Survive event. And what her organization does throughout the year is make sure that families who have been affected by cancer directly, whether it's one of the parents, one of the kids, or just a supporter, if they're supporting someone, they make sure that they have what they need in terms of finances. If they need their grass cut, anything that they need, this organization is there to provide that. And so what they did, they hosted 31 kids who they gave everything that they asked for on a list of 3 to 5 things that they wanted. So it was an amazing thing, and I was able to be a part of that, and capturing it. I didn't contribute like, Maya and her team did, but I was there to capture it. You guys can check those pictures out. But I bring that up because it's like these gifts meant the world to the kids, and a person like Maya, to me, is the one that should be celebrated and not Santa, because he's made up. So it kind of takes away from the real life heroes that we have walking amongst us every day. And so that's kind of my personal issue with it. But I guess people have their own reason for continuing to let kids believe what they want to believe in.
I want to drop another because during that year when I was really troubled, it was the idea that he sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. He knows when you've been bad or good, so be good for goodness sake. Now, of course, that's been imprinted on my brain, right? So I'll know this when I'm 100 years old. I'll be able to say that. But that's God, right? Mm-hmm. And here it is. They've presented to us this guy who is fabricated, as you said, just over 100 years ago, maybe somewhere in that time frame. And I think the history of that needs to be brought out. And I think we need to do something other than like the 23rd of December for bringing out this information. It's like this information needs to be, exposed. Rabbits that give birth to chocolate-covered eggs, and the list goes on of all these things that are fabrications in order to support commerce, but also to support just how much you have deluded the people into accepting that which is unacceptable and ridiculous.
Yeah.
We need that kind of education, at least to uneducate those who have been sufficiently indoctrinated. Right. And then we need a whole new crop of people who never get the indoctrination.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah. Doctor, what do you say?
I definitely agree with that. Just growing up, I remember the first time that I found out that Santa Claus was a myth, and it was interesting because we were always taught that Santa Claus would put coal in your eyes if you stayed up past a certain time frame, and I guess that was the time frame where your parents are going to go and put all the gifts under the tree or what have you.
Right.
And I'll never forget, it was one day, it had to be like in the late 1980s or early 1990s, and Mike Tyson was fighting. And I happened to watch the Mike Tyson fight, which went past midnight. And I was like, wait, nobody came to put coal in my
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or the other myths that are tied to that, like we're going to leave out the milk and cookies out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that makes it more believable for a child. Hey, the milk and cookies are gone.
Right.
Yeah.
And look, all these presents are here.
Right. Yeah.
He must have, the front doors or the chimney or whatever. And you're like, oh, this must have really happened. So you've got all this supporting energy behind. Now, this really does exist, son.
Right.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
The thing that I find just in raising children, and raising them in the truth, because when I was part of that, I never subscribed to that for obvious reasons. And the thing is that they would go to school and they would know the truth, but all of the children in their class would be perpetuating this lie, and it almost made them believe it. Because the power of the peer pressure that was there and the power of that surrounding energy. And we could even take that same thing and translate it into health, and talking about how there's so much misinformation, as Dr. Baruch had mentioned earlier. And when, people like Dr. Baruch or like myself or many others who are out here who are giving facts, and we can, show the documentation and this and that, and they go to the doctor's office and the doctor just gives a look and gives them this language that they don't understand, and it comes back and they just have the toughest time believing all of the facts or internalizing that, and they're going to go with whatever the peer pressure or whatever is the outside influences are going with. And it's just such a deep thing to me.
Right, and I'm glad you brought that up. Tell us a little bit, because I know we're getting into the health side now. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Well, I am a holistic wellness consultant and an herbalist. I offer wellness assessments, personal health consultations. I do group education, seminars and lectures and presentations for both children and adults regarding health, eating healthy, and also herbal medicine, which is one of the things that I think in our community is becoming increasingly, again, arousing that interest, but a lot of people don't really have a lot of information on, coming from particularly melanated people. You know, most of the time when you see herbalists who are out there Caucasian, and they really kind of control a lot of the information that gets disseminated, even though they're really getting it from us. You know, so I'm definitely proud to be one of the people who are out here on the forefront, helping to give that information about herbs and herbal medicine, and also to say that I've learned from people who look like us as well, which I think is very important too, because it changes the perspective in which it's given.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's also important that we cue ourselves up for this next couple of years and recognizing that it's going to be a change. It's going to be, it may be better in the sense that the information is going to be unadulterated and blunt right in your face. This is what we're going to do to you, and it's what you're going to have to accept. And you better hope that Santa or whoever it is that you believe in is going to be there to catch you, because we're about to do you something, you know, really nice, really something special. And I think I think it could be a good thing, because it could cause us to now look more inwardly, you know, into our community, into ourselves, in search of answers and in search of the empowerment that is necessary to bring about change. I just want to drop in there, Dr. I know you're busy on Wednesday nights, aren't you?
Yeah, some. As of right now, my schedule is changing up, so I may be freeing up on some Wednesday nights.
We need to bring them in there, Kris.
Yep,
we need
sure
to bring them in, Dr. We have this health, wealth, and knowledge of self that we do every Wednesday at Everlasting Life, and we'd love to bring you in and have you come on board and share some of that great wisdom that you've got with you.
I would love to be
Tell
here.
us about some of the things that you do. I know they're the herb walks, but give us a list. I know you started off into consultations, but there's some other things that you do as well.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of this year, I actually began my first formal herbal training program. I'm also part of the Chesapeake Herb Gathering that takes place in Southern Maryland. It's been going on for about the past 4 years, I want to say, and I've been a part of it for the past 3. I also do conduct herbal walks throughout the city, different locations, which is showing and teaching how to recognize herbs in their natural state, wild herbs that are growing, some herbs that people actually cultivate in their yards, or things that might be growing out on the street, on the sidewalk, in the pavement, the little cracks in the pavement, the trees, all of those things, and talking about the traditional and modern medicinal uses, which ones are edible, which ones are poisonous, things of that nature. Is good to get back into recognizing that for our own practical use, and for being able to pass that information on to our children. I think that's very important. If we know the indigenous plants that are around us, we'll never starve. And with all of the issues about food crisis and relying on the supermarkets and this and that, it's very important to be able to recognize those, and also just the dense source of nutrients that are in those wild plants. A lot of people don't know that those are some of the best and most nutritious plants that are out, and way more nutritious than the greens that we get in our supermarkets, you know. So showing things like that around, and the things that people think that you can only get in the health food store, or that you can only get in the natural food section of your Giant or wherever. Some of those things are growing right in our front lawns, and talking about that information, you know. So it's getting back to that essence of self-reliance is what I like to promote. Aside from that, I'm also a drummer and a drum instructor of West African drumming, particularly djembe and dunun drumming, and I teach a few times a week in D.C., and also drum for dance classes, part of Koyaba Dance Theater, my group Nidembaya, and just different other places I drum around the city and outside of the city as well. I've been involved in that from a very young age, about 2 years old or so. And I also promote holistic wellness through the drumming as well, which is another underserved kind of a pathway in a sense. So talk about how the drumming relates to life, how it relates to herbs in some sense, how it relates to just changing our overall state of health and well-being, reducing stress and improving concentration, helping children. I have a drum teacher actually who uses that to help children with their math. So it's a very interesting walk as well. But those are some of the main things that I'm really involved in. I also customize my own herbal tea blends that are for therapeutic use and also for health maintenance.
Yeah, you were here this weekend and got a chance to see some of those blends. And
yes.
What are some of the blends that you have? What kind of health challenges or balancing do you offer in, or detoxification do you offer in your blends?
Well, I like to say practically anything that anyone can name. We have things for, of course, the major health concerns in our community, the blood sugar or diabetes, blood pressure concerns, circulation and circulatory issues, heart congestion, and we have things for the kidneys, for the liver support. We have things for yeast infections, for fibroids for women, things for hormonal support, prostate concerns for men. We have things for immune system support, respiratory congestion, asthma, bronchitis. Anything you can name, even down to HIV and herpes and things of that nature that are considered more serious. We have herbs that can help to address all of that.
Yeah, that's great.
Wow, that's incredible. And so everything that you do is from the earth.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes,
so
yes.
How did you get into that? Because I'm thinking, we're in D.C. It's not exactly like New York urban, but it's not necessarily a farmland, assuming that you grew up in this area.
Well, actually, I grew up in New York.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm from New York.
Okay.
And I actually got into this at a very young age, practically fresh out of high school. And the way I got into it, well, first I always give credit first and foremost to my grandmother. My grandmother is the first person who really introduced me to the concept of what we put in our bodies affects our health. And I remember it was just something very simple that she told me when I was maybe about 3 or 4 years old. And I remember, and she was saying, eat those carrots, they're good for your eyes. And it just something clicked in me at that young age. And I was like, wow. So from that young age on, I always had somewhat of a consciousness of what I put in my body is going to affect my overall state of health, how my body functions, how I feel, etc. I have a cousin who's a dental hygienist. So I didn't eat a lot of candy growing up, relatively speaking. We still ate candy. I'm not going to sit here and lie.
Right.
But relatively speaking, I was very cognizant of not eating so much candy and things of that nature. So my mother also was against us eating pork. My father was very health conscious as well, and he's actually who introduced me to the healers in my community who really took me under their wing and molded me. And I started working at an herbal shop in the Bronx at the age of 17 years old, starting out packaging herbs. And just from that, it's just been an uphill journey, in terms of learning so many different things and how those herbs work and how they affect us, and then hearing testimonials of people who have come in and they've actually have been healed and have children who have been healed from asthma, and people who have had tumors and the tumors dissipated, and they've used herbs and changed the way that their eating habits were and things of that nature. So being at such a young age, 17, 18 years old, and coming into that information where we're taught that a lot of things are incurable, it just opened up a whole new world to me, and it inspired me and motivated me to want to study more and to learn more and to help people in that particular type of way. And I got my certification in 2007 through Dr. Laila Africa. And from then, a lot of independent study, a lot of experience, personal and secondhand experience, and, just so much that I've acquired over the years. But that's pretty much how I started my journey. And I have to credit my grandmother once again for giving me my first real experience in herbal medicine when I had a bee sting. Maybe when I was a teenager, and I had a bee sting on my chest, and I went inside, and I was so upset, and it was, just burning and all kind of stuff like that. And my grandmother used to smoke cigarettes, which I hated. And I told her I had the bee sting, and she went and took out her pack of cigarettes, and she opened it up, and she made my first experience with an herbal poultice, or as I would know now as an herbal poultice, where she took the tobacco out and she wet it, and she taped it to my chest where the bee sting was, and literally within a minute, that pain went away.
Wow.
So that's later on down the line, I learned that actually in my ancestry, I do have healers in my ancestry, which is the case for a lot of people who walk this path, as I'm finding out. So it's very, very interesting journey that I've had, but that's how I've gotten into it.
Right, and that's so interesting. I actually I don't know where I saw it or heard it, probably social media, but just the connection that we do have to our ancestors, and we're able to look back, we can see similarities in the things that we do, the gifts that we have. It's something that's genetic. So that's very interesting that you say that.
Yeah, energetically too. We have that energy that travels through, our bloodline. So it's not only genetic, which is energy at some level also, but also just energetically, there's certain things that we look at. And when we look at pictures of our great-grandparents or our grandparents, there's a certain energy that gets transferred that you might get that nobody else in the family gets.
Right.
Yes,
and all of a
indeed.
sudden you're doing things, it's like I remember being told that I did something just like my grandfather, who I never met, but, so that energy does get transferred. It's in our DNA, right?
Absolutely.
So, healing is something that we have had to do on our own for many years, because we weren't offered the opportunity to go to hospitals, and we didn't have necessarily, medical doctors coming to help us out with, situations unless we were about to die and we weren't going to be able to work that field anymore. So, being able to support health and wellness inside of us, and coming from the continent of Africa, and the prior to, the incursion and invasion by these Europeans, the continent here, that we were healers, and all of us. It was like you say, it needs to be a part of a curriculum.
Yeah.
And children need to learn how to heal, how to understand what goes on inside of the body, and how we can bring about balance and detoxification and healing inside of the body without relying on, the over-the-counter chemicals that are subduing the immune system and suppressing it to the extent that it's not able to protect us. But because we're not getting the sniffles anymore, we think it's a good thing, so we keep doing it, only to find out that now we got cancer or whatever else we may have, as we have effectively turned off the immune system, which is our protection. So you were talking earlier, Dr. Yu, about the herb walks, and you were talking about the herbs that are right here in our presence. What are some of the things that you have found here in the DC metropolitan area that are like growing and commonly in our front yards that many of us are cutting down, and we probably need them like now?
Oh yeah, well, definitely the chickweed.
I remember chickweed.
The red clover. There's plenty of red clover. There's plenty of plantain that grows around, or plantain leaf, or plantago, which is different than the fruit plantain for those who might be potentially getting it confused. There's plenty of black walnut trees that grow around here.
Is it ginkgo that's around here?
Ginkgo is plentiful, particularly in DC.
Yeah.
You see a lot of ginkgo trees, and I believe they were actually planted here, and I would dare say intentionally. Many of them were brought here from Asia as gifts, if I believe, just like the cherry trees. Were brought here and planted here, and one of the things that we often discuss during the herbal walks and during the herbal trainings is the energetics of herbs. And for those of us who are familiar with ginkgo, and even if you're not, ginkgo is one of the herbs that's associated with helping to improve memory and cognitive function and things of that nature. And for DC being a very decision-oriented type of a city, and to know that there's so many ginkgo trees that are around, you couldn't help but to think that this was an intentional thing that was put out there to support that energy. Now how effective it is in Washington, that's debatable. But we do know that energy is present there. Where people are, very mental and very much able to think quickly. Yeah. So it's a very interesting thing also. But other herbs, of course, rose, elderberry. We've encountered elderberry on our herbal walks, mullein, so many different things that I've come across.
Wow.
But those are some of the things that grace the top of my head at the moment.
Anything coming up in the not too distant future that you want to share with our audience?
Oh yeah, well, the herbal walks, we usually start those in the spring, usually around April. It's usually better and easier to identify things as the flowers are coming up. So I usually start those in April. Most immediately, I have a Kwanzaa event coming this evening at 7 o'clock p.m. We'll be at Riverside Healthy Living Center, which is located at 5200 Foot Street Northeast, right across from Marvin Gaye Park. Starting at 7 o'clock p.m., my group Need Them Buyer will be performing, and we'll be having a Kwanzaa celebration / presentation on the concept of Kujichagulia, which is self-determination, and that principle and how important it is for ourselves and for our community to really live by that and to really examine what that means for us. Kujichagulia is besides being my favorite principle to say, is one of the things that I think is very important for us, because our self-determination has really been stripped in many cases, and historically speaking up until present day, it's been stripped, where we have lost the ability to define ourselves, to define how we think, to define who we are as individuals, as a community, comfortably. And our history and our ancestral presence and practices and things of that nature, so to bring that back, that's very empowering for us. And but first we need to realize where it's been lost, because that's the disconnect that many of us have.
Right. And you spoke a lot about family and community. From your point of view, what can we do as a community to bring medicinal purposes for the herbs, as you do, to the forefront of the minds of our people?
Well, it starts with what our concept of herbs is.
Okay.
And herbs can be any plant. That means collard greens can be an herb. That means apples can be an herb. Oranges can be an herb. And then of course we have our culinary herbs, like parsley and mints and things of that nature, and lavender and chamomile, and our tea herbs. We have herbs that tend to be used, more on a medicinal standpoint, that are stronger, like golden seal and things of that nature, But it's about adjusting what our concept of it is, because if we let them tell it, and by them I mean the medical establishment that's in place, that are using herbs to manufacture medications, but won't tell people, but they'll make it seem like all of these herbs and the term herb itself is something that's dangerous and something that's detrimental to our well-being, when in actuality, a healthy person is really using herbs every day, through our foods, and it's just that we need to increase and improve the type and the quality of herbs and the quantity of herbs that we use on a daily basis, and know when and where to use and to apply these different herbs. So changing our concept, I think, is important, and that's one of the first things that I typically start with when I do public presentations talking about herbs is, how do we view and perceive what an herb is? And once we have that set in place, now we can further this discussion, because there's little blockages that are set in place in terms of being scared to use the things that are natural, that are that our ancestors have been using for centuries and millenniums and generations,
Right, exactly. And so for your particular products, what form do people generally use them in? Is it just tea, or is there a variety of uses?
Well, I tend to lean towards herbal tea blends because herbal tea blends are, one, they're more widely accepted as a safe and an easy to use kind of a form. It's for most of us, when we think about tea, we think about a beverage, and herbal teas and tea is not necessarily the same thing. Tea is a particular type of herb, a type of plant, but herbal tea is kind of like a layman's term that we use to describe the beverage that's made from different herbs. So an herbal tea can be made from any type of herb. Like technically coffee could be called an herbal tea, because coffee is made from a plant, a bean. Hot chocolate could be considered an herbal tea. You would make it in the same type of fashion as you would do, a green tea or a black tea or Earl Grey or what have you. So, just in terms of that concept, a lot of people have a lot less of that mental blockage towards utilizing herbal teas. And also, from a practical standpoint, it tends to be safer for the herbs that are stronger, whereas you have extracts sometimes which are very, very concentrated forms of herbal medicine. And some people or some of the studies and things like that are done on herbal extracts tend to come up with toxic results, and usually it's because they're experimenting on rats and guinea pigs and things of that nature, and they're utilizing these concentrations that nobody really would use in a real life situation, and they're determining that, okay, well, since we've concentrated this 3,000 times, now this rat is developing a liver tumor. So we now are saying that this herb may not be safe for human consumption, which is not the reality of how the herb would really be used. But in the case of an herbal tea, you really kind of eliminate a lot of that concern. And you also have more of a control of how the product and the process is being made. So as opposed to it being something that's already pre-prepared, you can prepare it yourself, and there's a variety of different ways and strengths in which you can prepare it, So that's why I lean towards that. But I do make herbal capsules. I do make herbal extracts and tinctures. I do make other preparations as well, both external and internal. But I lean towards the herbal tea blends as in reference to the line of products that I make, and that's what the majority of them are.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing that information. And I think it's just as we always say, the more information you have, the more power you have. And I think that's what it's going to come down to. And we hope that you are able to join us one Wednesday for our Health, Wealth, and Knowledge of Self workshop series. That's every Wednesday at 7 p.m. So if you haven't been out, guys, please come and check it out. It's phenomenal. We've had 3 so far, and we've covered different topics each time. And so our goal is just to empower the community with information, because that's what we need. The next step is for us to put together a plan of action so that we can do something. Talking is good, but we also have to do something so that we can make sure that our people get what they need.
Certainly.
Indeed. I want to thank you, Dr. Yu, for coming on and sharing with us. And
thank you for having me.
Once again, give us your contact information for those in the audience.
Sure. You can contact me directly by phone, call or text. I'm at area code 202-469-0264. Again, that's 202-469-0264. You can also email me at dryew@ymail.com. Again, that's dryew@ymail.com. And you can also contact me via Facebook. I'm at facebook.com/DOCTAYEW. That's facebook.com/DOCTAYEW. I have a new web store up for my herbal tea blends, and I don't know the exact web address off the top of my head, but you can definitely get it from contacting me by those other means. And I want to also shout out my partner, Ketnu Nefer of A Soulful Touch Wellness. She also is an herbalist, an excellent massage therapist, and many other talents, birth doula, etc. I would probably be up here another 10 minutes naming all of the talents that she has. But we'll also be up in Baltimore at the PLM Kwanzaa celebration tomorrow and Thursday at the Tawanda Recreation Center. So definitely look for us around. We'll be around in many different upcoming Kwanzaa events.
Great. Thank you very much, and we appreciate your presence and your knowledge and the work that you've done. It's a great honor to have you here in the studio.
Thank you.
Kris, it's been another great show, huh?
Yes, most definitely. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys tomorrow night once again at Everlasting Vegan Restaurant in Capitol Heights, Maryland. We're hosting the Health, Wealth, and Knowledge of Self workshop series. We start at 7 p.m., but come at 6 p.m. and enjoy some food, grab some dinner, chit-chat with us for a little bit, hang out, and then get the information that you need. And we're transforming that into a networking event as well, so keep a lookout for that information, because what we want to do is make sure that we cover all bases. The community needs it, and we want to make sure that we're the community resource that's going to supply those needs.
Great. This has been another Elife Media or Elife Power Lunch. Yes. You know, I never get it right. So this is the Elife Power Lunch here on the Elife Media Network. And you'll catch us again on tomorrow. That's Wednesday, where we've got another lineup of some really special people that are going to be sharing with you and us some really powerful information. So again, this is the Elife Power Lunch on the Elife Media Network. I and Kris Murray, I being Dr. Baruch, are your hosts, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Until then, have a wonderful day and stay warm, even though it's a lot warmer today.
Yeah, it's nice today.
Yeah, great.
Get some sunlight, vitamin D that we need, right?
There we go.
Get out there and get that.
All right, thanks.
Right.